CMQC?
That's firm. CMQC's here.
Okay, Jeff, one last lot on the constraints list. It is for our LOX pump. The guys are struggling a little bit inside of IPRACA in order to get the dispositions and signatures in there. We are going to hand sign it back here, and then we will take that back to CMQC. And what I'd like to do is have CMQC remove that wad from the constraints list once it is delivered to him. Technically, we are okay to go fly, and then ought to be sufficient to get that last constraint removed from the constraints list.
Okay, CMQC, you copy and concur?
Copy and concur.
Okay, and also SPE, if we, for some reason, we can't get that this full even hand done, we can still do it over the net here if we need to.
Understood, but we just hand signed it, so it's on its way back to CMQC.
Okay, excellent, excellent. All right.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and thanks CMQC for your support as well.
Not a problem, sir.
This is shuttle launch control, T-minus 21 minutes, 24 seconds and counting, or correction, T-minus 9 minutes and holding with 21 minutes, 20 seconds remaining in this planned built-in hold. Continuing to count down toward picking up the countdown at T-minus 9 minutes. Right now we're looking at a little area of weather that's popped up over Merritt Island to the west. The larger area of precipitation to the northwest appears that it's going to be well biased by the time the launch is scheduled to go. However, the shuttle training aircraft with Rick Sturko is looking at that very closely to try to characterize exactly what it's doing and how stable it is and where it will be, as well as looking at this little small area that is over North Merritt Island that is gradually being characterized as something that could become a rain shower. And we want to see how safe that'll be. We have 18 minutes, 20 seconds remaining in this built-in hold at T-minus 9 minutes.
It's going to be a grand finale.
We're making a point of savoring the moment while we can.
So Atlantis will have a proud legacy.
After 30 years and more than 130 flights,
we've seen every one of them.
America's space shuttle is about to fly one last time. Good morning, live from Kennedy Space Center. I'm Bob Opsahl, and we are all about to become eyewitnesses to history. The Space Shuttle program, after 30 years, is coming to an end. And the most complicated machine ever built is sitting at Launch Pad 39A right now in the form of Atlantis. And inside are 4 brave human beings, 3 men and 1 woman, ready to make history, and as they take the shuttle on its last ride ever. We are here at Kennedy Space Center to bring you the launch of the Space Shuttle Atlantis as you become an eyewitness to history. The countdown clock, as you can see, is sitting at 9 minutes and holding. And the big concern at this hour is the weather. Kevin Oliver is here with me, and we're going to be talking about that right now.
It appears just in the last few minutes a couple of small cells have popped up within the area that they are concerned about. They are, at last check, still green for weather in terms of they can still go, but they were concerned about whether this weather might become an issue over the last remaining minutes of this countdown. And Rick Sturkow, an astronaut, is actually flying over the area right now in the shuttle training aircraft, trying to get a gauge on some of these clouds and possible rainstorms that are moving into the area to see if it will indeed become an issue in the last few minutes of this countdown.
Well, we certainly hope it doesn't, because we want to see this thing get off the ground today and not have to try this again. And there are about 1 million people surrounding the Space Center right now who are hoping the same thing. Should be quite a show here in just the next 25 minutes or so.
It's been a relatively smooth countdown up until the last few minutes. We haven't heard really of any issues other than the weather throughout most of the day. But this is going to be, if it does go off in the next couple of minutes, a historic mission.
When Columbia first took off from the Kennedy Space Center, the people who pushed for the space shuttle never knew how long it would be around or the impact it might have. Now Atlantis is about to lift off, and Chris Ferguson, Rex Walheim, Sandra Magnus, and Doug Hurley will be the last to experience the unique trip into space aboard a shuttle.
It's very surreal, especially the launch experience, because in 8.5 minutes you go from 0 to 25 times the speed of sound, 17,500 miles an hour. In the first 2 minutes, you're on the solid rocket boosters, and it rocks and rolls and shakes.
Their mission was originally put together as a contingency plan for an emergency rescue of Endeavour's crew, but it evolved into its own, the last supply run for the space station. For the thousands of ground support personnel, it puts their life's work in the spotlight one last time.
You knew this was coming, but it's still one of those, it just doesn't seem like it's really going to happen, but it's happening.
The workers and the astronauts say the hardest part will be the return trip, leaving the space station.
I think it will be a little bit emotional with that, too. But I think the views will just be overwhelming. So I'm really looking forward to that.
And then when Atlantis touches down, 30 years of shuttle history, and the cornerstone of this country's manned space program will roll to a stop.
And it's hard to believe that this day is actually here. It was something like 7 years ago that President George W. Bush at the time said that the space shuttle, the program, should complete the space station and the space shuttles should stop flying. It's hard to believe that this day is actually here.
It sure is, especially for me. I was here for the very first launch, as we've been mentioning, and it's been 30 years, and it just shot right by. And here we are at the end of the program, and a lot of folks are upset that we don't have a new program to go to.
Absolutely.
No real direction anymore. Of course, that'll be yet to be seen in the coming weeks and months and years. But as we've mentioned, one of the big concerns out here is the weather. So we want to go to Cassandra Crimmy right now and take a look at that possible shower popping up in the Merritt Island area. Cassandra?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The clouds and the rain chances have really been the thing that we've been talking about for the last few weeks that were going to be an issue potentially for this launch. And if we take a look outside right now, this is a loop of our visible satellite and radar. Good news is, look at all the heavy rain well off towards the west. And if you take a look towards Brevard County, talk about seeing some of the lightest cloud cover of the entire area right now, and also some of the smallest rain coverage. We'll go to early warning Doppler 9 HD, and again, we can pick up on some of those showers developing. Very, very few of them, though, are pushing into Brevard County. We'll even freeze it for you. Take a look at some of those showers. Zooming in just a bit, pad 39A now in the view, and what we're picking up on is just that one shower about 3 to 4 miles north of it. Good news, the direction of this moving towards the north and east, so rain-wise, it looks like we might just scoot right on by.
Well, I hope that's the case, and it has to stay, what, about 20 miles away for it to be no concern for NASA, especially during the launch.
And the main concern is that if the shuttle had a problem during liftoff, they don't want it flying back through rain. They don't want it flying through rain to begin with, but they don't want to have to try and land it through rain back at the landing strip if there is a problem. Pete Nikolenko, the NASA test director who has been monitoring the situation, is talking about the situation right now from launch control. Let's listen in for a moment.
Appropriate visibility in case we had to return to this KSC launch site.
So does that mean that the weather reconnaissance aircraft, the STA with Rick Sturckow, is providing a lot of input to what he's actually seeing?
Absolutely. In fact, we're relying very heavily on the observed conditions of CJ in the shuttle training aircraft to see what, in fact, that they're really seeing up in the air and confirming what the meteorologists are working and seeing from their data. So combined together, we get the forecasters as well as the observations and conclude with the appropriate weather.
Well, Pete, thanks very much, and we'll let you go back to
what he was talking about, of course, was the STA, the shuttle training aircraft, the Gulfstream that they fly around the area, which simulates the flight characteristics of the orbiter itself when it's functioning as a glider, when it's coming back in. So they're able to see the weather in the area and assess what's going on out there, and that's what they're looking at right now.
And actually fly through it as if the shuttle commander, Chris Ferguson, was making an emergency landing so that they can get a sense of whether it's possible given the current situation that's out there right now.
Okay, well, they hope, I know a lot of folks hope that he does determine it's stable and that the launch can go, because there, as we've been mentioning all morning, there are about 1 million extra people in Brevard County right now, and a whole bunch of them are out at Spaceview Park with Channel 9's Barrett Peterson. Barrett, you've got to really be in tight quarters out there right now.
Well, Bob, I'd love to take you on a little tour around here, but I can't get more than about 6-7 inches before getting stuck. There are thousands of people out here at Spaceview Park in Titusville. It's called Spaceview Park for a reason, because just across the Indian River is the shuttle launch pad, and these folks are just chomping at the bit. They cannot wait for Atlantis to go, and things are looking good here. You know, the sky is clearing over this particular spot, so everybody is getting excited, and they're over there on the causeway too, packed up there. This is quite a sight here to see this many people. Most of these folks arrived last night and in the hours into this morning to stake out a little patch of ground, and everybody's got their little piece of property, and Bob, they're waiting for it to go.
2 minutes remaining in this plane.
As are we all. Thanks a lot, Barrett. And just the roads are jam-packed in Brevard County, and probably all the roads right now leading into Brevard County. If you're not here yet, you might be too late.
That's right, and we're listening closely right now because any moment now we're expecting NASA's launch director, Mike Leinbach, to start the polling. Actually, the NASA test director will start some of the polling, and then Mike Leinbach will finish it up. But Chris Ferguson, Sandra Magnus, Rex Walheim, and Doug Hurley are all strapped into the space shuttle right now. They're looking through those windows. They've seen some of those clouds go overhead and then disappear, and then some of that sunlight shine through. We actually saw some sunlight shine through that cockpit window earlier today. It was sort of surprising to see that those rays of light all of a sudden after such gloomy weather for the last couple of days.
It sure was, especially since the main concern this morning was the cloud cover, not necessarily just the rain, but the cloud cover. And there's plenty of clouds out there now, but apparently not as big a concern. As you can see, the flags are blowing out there near the countdown clock, and there is some wind, but not enough to cause a problem. The immediate problem is a possible shower in the Merritt Island area that could come within that 20-mile radius of the Space Center.
That's right, and you can see the huge crowds out here at the press site. We haven't
boy.
seen crowds like this for a while. And then from Sky Witness, you can also see some of those clouds over the area just on the northern side of Merritt Island, which is the main concern at this point,
right.
whether or not those clouds will increase and possibly bring a shower.
Yeah, below the chopper, it's just those puffy little clouds, but above the chopper, you've got that pretty overcast area. NASA's been really good at finding holes over the years to punch through those clouds and around the rain showers and get the shuttle into orbit, and we certainly hope that is going to be the case today. We want to show you a little graphic we put together about past scrubs and recent scrubs. Well, they call it the scrub risk. As you know, we've had 134 missions so far. This will be number 135. And over the years, they've averaged 60 to 70% chances of a launch on their first attempt. And that's what we have today. Early on in the program, most of the scrubs were caused by technical problems. There was still a lot of adjustments to do back in those days. But over the last decade, most of the scrubs have been caused by weather.
And that's the situation that we may be posed with today.
Mm-hmm.
The tanking went perfectly. They had no issues with any of the valves, any of the leaks.
No cracks?
No cracks, nothing that we have seen over the last few launches. And everything seems to be moving along perfectly in terms of the countdown, except for the weather.
Right. But it still has been a beautiful morning out here, and there's so much emotion here at the Space Center today. We saw it, especially once the astronauts moved out of the building, loaded themselves into the Astrovan, and came out here past the VAB, and they just had such a big cheering crowd, the employees here and the technicians and everybody who've been working on the space program for the past 30 years, cheering them on. And we saw some incredible video, too, even in the closeout crew.
That's right.
Holding up these wonderful little signs they had made to the camera in that white room where the astronauts go through to get through the access hatch to the space shuttle. And here's what the little signs that they held up. I can't read it from where I'm sitting, but hopefully you folks at home can put together this sentence that they wrote for everybody at home, everybody here at the Space Center. Godspeed Atlantis, and one last sign, God bless America. Some real emotion. These folks, barring a scrub today, have done their jobs for the very last time here at Kennedy Space Center.
And it sounds like I thought I heard something coming from launch control, but
okay.
I guess it sounds like it's gone quiet again. So it sounds like everything is still moving along. We're still holding at T-minus 9 minutes and holding at this point. We have a few minutes left in this hold before they come out. Yeah. And of course, the launch director will have to do that poll before they can come out of this T-minus 9 minutes. It's a very short window, 10-minute window to get to the International Space Station. This mission, of course, is the last resupply mission to the International Space Station aboard a space shuttle.
Yeah, I thought I heard them talking earlier about maybe only a 4.5-minute window for this particular flight, but I don't know if they shortened it because of other constraints or what. But as we mentioned earlier, a lot of folks on the road heading toward this launch, and I believe we have a camera available right now so we can show you the traffic situation out there. It is miserable if you're trying to get here at this hour. There you go. I'm not sure.
Actually, if we can listen, let's listen into the Launch Control Center now.
Okay, as we watch that and we listen to the control center.
TTC is go. LPS is go. Houston flight.
Houston flight, if you pull me at the end, I would appreciate it. Stand by.
Yes, sir, we'll pull you later. Mila. Mila's go. STM. STM is go. Safety console. Safety console is go. SPE. SPE is go. LRD. LRD is go. SRO. SRO is go. You have a range clear to launch. And CDR. CDR is go. And Launch Director NTD, our launch team is ready to proceed with the exception of flight, who still needs a little bit more time to make his evaluations on RTLS weapons. I copy that. I'll do my poll at this time. KC Chief Processing Engineer, verify no constraints to launch. No constraints. Thank you, Steve. KC Safety and Mission Assurance.
Safety and Mission Assurance is built, Mike. Thanks, sir. Payload launch manager. Safety and Mission Assurance is built, Mike.
Thank you, sir. Payload launch manager.
Hey, Mike, on behalf of the ISS ground processing team, I want to say thanks to you and the shuttle team. It's been a great partnership, and we are good.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. Range weather.
Launch weather has no constraints to launch.
Thank you, Kathy. Atlanta Flow Director.
On behalf of the KSC Shuttle Processing Team, we are go.
Thank you, Angie. Ops Manager.
See, Mike, waiting to get final go from flight here. Let's hear what he says, and we'll get back to you.
Copy that. Atlantis, launch director, air to ground 1.
Atlantis, go.
Okay, Fergie, we're starting to feel pretty good down here on the ground about this one today. So on behalf of the greatest team in the world, good luck to you and your crew on the final flight of this true American icon. And so for the final time, Fergie, Doug, Sandy, and Rex, good luck, Godspeed, and have a little fun up there.
Hey, thanks to you and your team, Mike. Until the very end, you all made it look easy. The shuttle's always going to be a reflection of what a great nation can do when it dares to be bold and commits to follow through. We're not ending the journey today, Mike. We're completing a chapter of a journey that will never end. You and the thousands of men and women who gave their hearts, souls, and their lives for the cause of exploration have rewritten history. Let's light this fire one more time, Mike, and witness this great nation at its best. The crew of Atlantis is ready for launch.
Thank you, sir. We'll get you going here in a couple of minutes.
NTD, Houston flight on 212.
Go ahead, flight.
For the record, I'm go.
NTD copies, and launch director, that is our entire launch team, we are ready to proceed at this time. I copy that. Ops manager.
Some mighty good news there. All the launch polling sites are go for launch. So we're about now 10 minutes away from the very last space shuttle flight ever.
And Bob, it was interesting because they have said all through the last few flights that they didn't want much emotion. They wanted to stay focused on this mission. But you could sense the emotion. You could sense the emotion all day today.
These are human beings.
Absolutely, and you could sense it from Mike Leinbach there. He knows that this is a chapter that's coming to an end. Chris Ferguson, the commander, he's there in the commander seat. Of course, he's got to be the most focused of just about everybody within this mission and the group that's trying to get this shuttle off the ground today. But you could sense that he knows that there's a definite finality about this today.
And there's such a camaraderie between all of these folks. It was interesting to see as the astronauts were climbing into the space shuttle for the last time, going through the white room.
Entity with that, you were clear to launch Atlantis. Entity with that, you were clear to launch Atlantis. I copy that, sir. Thank you.
There you go.
We have 1 minute, 15 seconds of hold time remaining.
All right.
Entire test team, we have 1 minute, 15
cranking up
seconds
the
of hold time
countdown clock
remaining
in
here,
one minute
before we will pick up the clock. And we do have a clear to pick up the clock at 9.
The one little story I was telling you is when Rex Walheim was going through the white room there, and he was ripping the name tags off of the closeout crew's uniforms. They're just Velcroed on. But he is going to carry those into space and give them back to them when they come back. So they will have name tags as a souvenir that actually flew in space.
And it really I mean, there's so many thousands of people that have worked on the space shuttle program. At the height of the program, 16,000 people were working on it. And they all have such a variety of jobs, but they all have the one thing in common, what's happening today. And it really does bond them here. I mean, you sense it not just, I mean, there's people that work on the parachutes that carry the solid rocket boosters down. There's people that work on the tanks. There's divers that go out there to retrieve the solid rocket boosters. Then there's the spacecraft orbiters, the crawler drivers. There's such a variety of people, all facets of life, all sorts of skill sets. And the shuttle is the one thing that bonds them all together.
They are one big team. And certainly we've learned over the years that those teams work together to keep people alive while they're in orbit, and we are now counting down. We're at 8:50 and counting.
The sequencer will be checking over 1,000 parameters between now and when it hands off to Atlantis' onboard computers at T-minus 31 seconds.
And there is a possible hold at the 5-minute point where they start the auxiliary power units, which power the flight surfaces on the orbiter. But if it goes through that, then that means we're going to have a launch at 11:26 this morning.
Main engine start.
Assess in the last 6.6 seconds.
And it will assess in the last 6.6 seconds whether the engines are up to full thrust.
Again, here come the main engines that you'll be able to see them.
Oh, there they are.
Come to life.
Beautiful shot of the 3 main engines.
Fuel cells for your checklist.
8 minutes from lighting them off.
You just gave me goosebumps to hear Mike Leinbach talking to Chris Ferguson about, the end of this program coming and trying to complete this flight here.
In about 20 seconds, we'll be retracting the crew orbiter access arm.
And of course, this mission almost didn't happen. Atlantis has already been through this aspect in some ways, because the crew had thought that the last time Atlantis launched that might be the final Atlantis mission.
Yep, this got funded, and now we're seeing the orbiter access arm swinging away from Atlantis. That, of course, was the hatch where the astronauts loaded into the orbiter.
We salute the entire astronaut corps for their dedication, not only for our expanded knowledge of the universe, but for the improvements you have contributed to on Earth. Have an excellent mission and Godspeed.
And there, another tribute.
Thank you very much. Great to your team. Thank you, sir.
And I apologize for talking
Test
over part of that.
Roberta Wyrick from United Space Alliance.
Beautiful shot of the shuttle on the pad, the orbiter access arm retracting to the launch gantry. And once again, another tight shot of the main engines.
The pilot will be instructed to start the orbiter auxiliary power units.
And there's all the press that are out here at this site. It definitely rivals the John Glenn launch. Definitely more people out here than returned to flight a few years back.
Yeah, I don't know how many journalists are out here. I think they credentialed about 1,000 or so.
More than 1,000, actually, and some from as far away as New Zealand are out here.
A bunch of folks and a lot of cameras trained on this shuttle. We are now at the 6-minute mark. And you're looking at some of the crowds, and you can see the cars pulling over on the side of the road, which of course is illegal and unsafe, and we've been told to remind folks that it's not something you really want to do, but I guess this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to view the last space shuttle launch ever, and these folks are going to take advantage of it, because obviously they're not going to get to the Space Center or anywhere near the Space Center anywhere closer to the Space Center than they are right now.
And about 5.5 minutes left in this countdown. It's funny because when the first weather forecast came out and they said, oh, 70% no-go, a lot of people asked me, well, why are they even going to try? Well, this is why they tried, because there is the opportunity every once in a while. You know, the Florida skies, they'll clear up.
It's Florida weather.
Right, exactly. And here you have it. It was gloomy, gloomy, gloomy. Lightning strikes near the pad yesterday, and here we have some blue sky.
All right, now we're 5 minutes from launch, and they are starting the APUs, the auxiliary power units.
CDR, OTC, reconfigure heaters.
And that is a major milestone on the way to launch.
That is.
They don't like to start those things up unless they know they're going to launch.
No, because once they start those up, it's a whole new ball game when it comes to recycling the shuttle to try again.
Shutting them down and doing all that. And as I mentioned, those control the flight surfaces, and we should be seeing them test those flight surfaces any moment now. They'll gimbal the main engines, and they'll flap the body flap and the tail rudder. And we'll see some of that in tight shots as it happens.
Bob, you were out here for the very first shuttle launch, and you were telling me earlier that when it did the roll maneuver, that surprised everybody.
I wasn't ready for that. As the shuttle leaves the pad, it actually rolls like this, almost on its back, it looks like. And it's a normal maneuver that they do to get the astronauts into orbit on the proper trajectory. But it scared me the first time I saw it. I thought something was going wrong.
And 30 years later, it's a signature move. I mean, it's known for that.
Yeah, yeah. Now we're seeing the gimbaling of the main engines, and they're moving the rudder there, testing to make sure that the APUs are functioning properly and that they do have control of their flight surfaces. And we are at 3.5 minutes to launch.
And actually the launch window, which was about 10 minutes originally, has opened. They target the center of the window to try and get optimum power and energy. And actually, because they are launching today, there is the possibility that they'll have enough extra oxygen, liquid hydrogen on board that they could extend this mission by a day. So right now it's a 12-day mission.
Right.
Once they get into space, they'll see how much fuel they have left and whether they can support an extra day.
So we just saw the main engines gimbaling, and they look like they're in good shape. And as we've been mentioning, once the launch is off the ground, that's not officially the end of the program. This thing has to land first. Then we have the end of the shuttle era.
And a lot of the people out here remind us of that, that it's not over until this crew of 4 lands back safely, and they're hoping, of course, to land Atlantis back here because of course, it's easier for them to process it, and because Atlantis will remain here after it's retired.
And there goes the so-called beanie cap. It's the gaseous oxygen vent that keeps ice from forming on the nose of the external tank.
No unexpected errors.
Copy that.
Another nice milestone as we head toward launch in 2 minutes and 9 seconds.
Flight crew OTC, close and lock your visors and initiate O2 flow.
You hear them telling the astronauts to close their visors.
And turn on the oxygen.
T-minus 2 minutes.
This is where things start to get tense. Everybody's stomach tightens up a little. And you can only imagine what's going through the minds and hearts of the 4 astronauts aboard the Space Shuttle Atlantis right now, the final 4. 3 men and 1 woman.
They actually say that when they get to this point, they have so many things to do, it's automatic. They just go through the routines that they've trained so much for.
They have trained so well, absolutely. But still, they're human beings, and they just have to be just a touch anxious, I would think, at this point.
Less than a minute and a half to the final launch of the Space Shuttle.
We are coming down to it. Ladies and gentlemen, you are about to witness history here at Kennedy Space Center from Launch Pad 39A.
The water system is being armed.
The Atlantis, with about 120 million miles on the odometer, is now about 1 minute from launch.
T-minus 1 minute.
And we are going to let NASA pretty well take over from this point on, and we'll just keep silent and let you enjoy the last Space Shuttle launch ever.
T-minus 40 seconds, handing off to Atlantis' computers at T-minus 31. T-minus 35, 33.
Clock will hold at T-minus 31 seconds due to a failure.
And we have had a failure. Grand launch sequencer.
On the dock's retract switches. NNTDSP.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. We need guys to go do the verification per the LCC, please.
All right, CMAC.
Yes, CMAC. The LCC says we need to verify using a camera, and we're positioning camera 62 right now.
Okay. Let us know as soon as 62 is swung over, and you can verify LCC for GVA retract, please.
Okay, clearly there's been a problem because they've stopped the countdown at T-minus 31 seconds. We don't know exactly what the issue is yet.
While we get a verification that the GVA has fully retracted.
It sounds like they were wondering whether something had retracted.
We verify retracted.
So they may pick up the count any second now.
Okay, and you can verify that it is fully retracted per the instructions that we've been that we developed, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and SPE?
And NTD, SPE concurs. They satisfy the requirements of GSC 13 pre-plan contingency. I'm go.
Okay, I copy. And launch director? Yes, sir. I heard all that and concur. Press on. All right, very good.
NTD, SPE.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I need concurrence to GLS and mass to clear the hold, please.
Very good. And GLS, you have concurrence? Go.
Copy that. It's in work.
Thank you. Let us know when that's complete.
It almost sounded there like they were going to press ahead, but...
All right, guidance.
We'll have to listen in and see.
Yeah, we'll have to keep listening. The 31-second point...
Folks, our lock spin back hold time is 3 minutes and 16 seconds.
Now, they don't have much time left in this window.
GLS on 212. We're ready to go.
All right, very good. And launch director, with that cleanup, we're going to go ahead and proceed. Yes, sir. Please do. All right. And all personnel, we are going to pick up the clock here momentarily. And GLS, you can resume the clock on your mark.
Copy that. Countdown clock will resume on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
T-minus.
Go for auto sequence start.
Handoff to Atlantis' computers has occurred. Solid rocket booster nozzle steering check and work.
20.
Firing chain is armed.
15.
Go for main engine start. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All 3 engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff, the final liftoff of Atlantis on the shoulders of the space shuttle. America will continue the dream.
Program, Houston.
Roger, roll, Atlantis. Houston now controlling the flight of Atlantis. The space shuttle spreads its wings one final time for the start of a sentimental journey into history. 24 seconds into the flight, roll program complete. Atlantis now heads down, wings level on the proper alignment for its 8.5-minute ride to orbit. 4.5 million pounds of hardware and humans taking aim on the International Space Station. 40 seconds into the flight, the 3 liquid fuel main engines throttling back to 72% of rated performance in the bucket, reducing stress on the shuttle as it goes transonic for the final time. Engines now revving up, standing by for the throttle up call.
Atlantis, go at throttle up, no action, DPDT.
Go with throttle up, no action on DPDT.
That call from Capcom Barry Wilmore, a transducer, instrumentation only, no action required. Atlantis now 15 miles in altitude, already 16 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, 1 minute 40 seconds into the flight. Atlantis flexing its muscles one final time. Atlantis traveling almost 2,600 miles an hour, 21 miles in altitude, 24 miles downrange, standing by for solid rocket booster separation. Booster officer confirms staging a good solid rocket booster separation. Guidance now converging. The main engine steering the shuttle on a pinpoint path to its preliminary orbit. 2 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. Atlantis already traveling 3,200 miles an hour, 35 miles in altitude, 50 miles downrange.
Just an
The propulsion
absolutely
officer
beautiful
reports the orbital
launch.
maneuvering system engines have ignited.
Unbelievable.
Atlantis kicking on its afterburners
A true
for 1 minute,
cliffhanger
23 seconds.
at the very
for final
end,
phase of
stopping
power
at T-minus 31 seconds, then continuing.
Atlantis, 2-engine TOW.
All right. That means they can make it across the Atlantic Ocean on just 2 engines, but they have all 3 burning. As you saw just a moment ago, the solid rocket boosters fell off at exactly the right point, and the shuttle Atlantis is on its way toward orbit for the very last time.
What a way to end the shuttle program on a high note. Taking off on this launch attempt. All these people are here cheering this on. A truly spectacular sight here.
And the cheer that went up after that thing cleared the tower was almost as loud as the shock wave that hit us about 15 seconds later, because we're about 3 miles from the launch pad, and it takes about 15-20 seconds for the shock wave to actually hit us, and it just rattled our studio here.
It's almost like we were going for a ride ourselves here.
We were for a moment there. What a beautiful launch, and I love this camera shot that we get on the external tank, and I believe they have an extra camera on the external tank this time too, don't they?
They do have an extra. They're trying to get a few more shots. Actually, the camera that's on the tank this time will try and capture what happens to the tank after it separates and try and broadcast that back to the space program as long as it can before the external tank burns up and then crashes into the Indian Ocean. In part because what they are hoping is that if the program, the space program, decides to use an external tank type a device in whatever that comes next, they want to know how it behaves when it comes back into the Earth's atmosphere.
4 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight.
And still going well. The main engines will be burning for
Atlantis
8.5 minutes total, and there went some pieces of something just flew off of the external tank. There's some more. It looks as if some of the foam is coming off again. And at this point, it seems a little late in the launch for that to be happening.
Yeah, usually the concern is when it's early on in the launch. So 4 minutes and 30 seconds into the flight, there might not be what they call the aerodynamic pressure. There's not enough air there to give it the kind of weight that might cause any damage on the shuttle. Of course, They will be inspecting this shuttle very closely. There is no backup shuttle to rescue these 4 astronauts if there is a problem with this flight.
But it's looking good so far.
To ATO.
All right.
Press to ATO.
That call indicating we can make minimal orbital targets in the event of an engine failure. All 3 engines continue to function normally. Atlantis will begin its slow roll to a heads-up position shortly.
And at that point, we'll be going about 9,000 miles per hour as it heads toward orbit.
5.5 minutes into the flight. Atlantis traveling 7,700 miles an hour, 315 miles downrange.
A little slower than
Atlantis,
I thought, but
single engine ops 3.
Single engine ops 3.
Still very fast.
Still very fast. It's this is interesting. It's the fastest winged vehicle ever built, and reaches a speed of 17,500 miles an hour
And the guidance officer here in Mission Control confirms
and there you
that
see the shuttle turning upside down before it releases the external tank here.
Yep. We're still a couple minutes away from the release, but
we've rolled
get a
to a heads-up
good look at the
position
tiles
now, providing better
underneath.
communications through the tracking and data relay satellite system as Atlantis heads uphill. 6 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight.
Just spectacular sights from those cameras.
Atlantis
It sure
press
is.
to MECO.
MECO meaning main engine cutoff
That call
at the
indicates
8.5
that we
minute
can make
point.
our normal orbital cutoff targets in the event of an engine failure. However, all 3 main engines continue to function normally.
Nominal. Fergie, go the plus X, go the pitch.
I'm on a shutdown plan. Go for the plus X, go for the pitch.
That
And
call
now, as you can
indicating
see,
that we will be in good shape for the orientation of Atlantis for external tank photography following main engine cutoff. Now 7 minutes into the flight.
and you can see the curvature of the Earth behind the orbiter right now.
1 minute, 20 seconds till main engine cutoff. Atlantis traveling 12,000 miles an hour.
You know, if they go to the next rocket, which will have a capsule on top, you won't have not necessarily these types of views where you have the belly of a spacecraft that you can see take off. You'll just have
Atlantis currently
a
traveling
single
at a speed of
rocket.
more than 4 miles a second.
That's faster than my MG.
1 minute of powered flight remaining for Atlantis.
And then, of course, once the main engine's cut off, the astronauts become weightless.
3 good main engines, 3 good auxiliary power units, 3 good fuel cells. Approaching the 8-minute mark into the flight. Atlantis now traveling more than 15,000 miles an hour.
They say they continue, you know, this program's been going on for 30 years, but they continue to learn something new every mission, every launch they have. They seem to learn something new about how this spacecraft
8 minutes,
is
15
behaved.
seconds into the flight, standing by for main engine cutoff. That'll be followed a few seconds later by the separation of the external fuel tank.
And that's always fun to watch, too. I love the fact that they've got this camera here.
Booster officer confirms main engine cutoff. For the last time, the Space Shuttle's main engines have fallen silent as the shuttle slips into the final chapter of a storied 30-year adventure. Now standing by for external tank separation.
And there it goes for the final time. Atlantis now
Atlantis off
safely
the
in orbit.
tank. Commander Chris Ferguson will be maneuvering Atlantis now into an orientation to enable Sandy Magnus to capture digital still imagery of the external fuel tank as it drifts away.
OMS 1 is not required. Your preliminary OMS 2 TIG, 37 minutes.
And they want those pictures of the tank because then they can figure out where the foam has come off and if that foam would cause any damage. Of course, all of that is a routine that became necessary after the Columbia accident.
Right. And they'll be inspecting the orbiter in orbit to see what the belly looks like and all the critical areas of the tiles.
But with only 4 astronauts, this group really has their work cut out for them. They usually schedule lunch breaks and dinner breaks for the astronauts, and on this mission, actually, some of these astronauts are going to have to eat while they're unloading and loading supplies from the space shuttle and moving them onto the International Space Station.
That is a tight schedule.
It is a tight schedule. That's why they're sort of hoping for this additional day to give them a little bit of a break, but they really have a tight schedule.
All right, well, let's see what people thought of this launch. We thought it was fantastic and spectacular and all the words like that, there's so many, I can't even call them to mind right now. But let's hear from the folks out at, say, Spaceview Park, where Channel 9's Bernd Peterson has been with that huge crowd out there. Bernd, how did they like it?
Bob, you just can't help but be emotional about this. You could see as many cheers as tears. Just a combination of both out here. We're going to give you a little panoramic view here of Spaceview Park here in Titusville. Thousands of people came, and they understand the significance of this event, of what just happened, and folks just overwhelmed by this last flight of the space shuttle, and thousands of people that crammed in here. Most of them arrived over the last 8 hours. Many were camping here over the last 2-3 days because they wanted to get a good spot to see history, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and really, truly a last-in-a-lifetime opportunity, because this will never happen again. Reporting live from Titusville, Bernd Peterson, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
I think we are all savoring the moments and trying to commit it all to memory, burn it into our brains, and so this sticks with us for a long time because it's the last time we'll ever see something like this.
Absolutely. It's still hard to believe that this is it. You know, it's you see them happen every so many months. You know, they take off from here, and everybody gets geared up for it. People come from all over, and we don't know when the next time something will launch from the Kennedy Space Center again.
30 years and 3 months, 135 launches from Kennedy Space Center of the Space Shuttle, and this was the last one. Let's go take a look now at what happened as it was entering orbit. We mentioned that we saw some debris falling from the external tank, and here's that video. You can see some pieces coming off. This was about 4.5 minutes into the launch, so not at a super critical point, but some fairly major pieces coming off of that external tank and not appearing to impact the orbiter itself.
Not that we can tell from this camera angle.
Yeah,
of course, they have several different cameras that they will be looking at, and they will be reviewing all of this video pretty intensely. And as the orbiter approaches the International Space Station, they'll be making sure that that it didn't that if it left any scars, they'll be able to notice them.
Oh yeah, they're going to be checking that for sure. Would you like to take another look and see this spectacular launch one last time? Well, let's take a replay right now and watch the Space Shuttle Atlantis lift off on its final flight.
2, 1, 0, and lift off. The final lift off of Atlantis on the shoulders of the space shuttle. America will continue the dream.
Program, Houston.
Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Houston now controlling the flight of Atlantis. The space shuttle spreads its wings one final time for the start of a sentimental journey into history. 24 seconds into the flight, roll program complete. Atlantis now heads down, wings level on the proper alignment for its 8.5-minute ride to orbit. 4.5 million pounds of hardware and humans taking aim on the International Space Station. 40 seconds into the flight, the 3 liquid fuel main engines throttling back to 72% of rated performance in the bucket, reducing stress on the shuttle as it goes transonic for the final time. Engines now revving up, standing by for the throttle up call.
Atlantis, go at throttle up, no action, DPDT.
Go with throttle up, no action on DPDT.
That call from Capcom Barry Wilmore, a transducer, instrumentation only, no action required. Atlantis now 15 miles in altitude, already 16 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, 1 minute 40 seconds into the flight. Atlantis flexing its muscles one final time. Atlantis traveling almost 2,600 miles an hour, 21 miles in altitude, 24 miles downrange. Standing by for solid rocket booster separation. Booster officer confirms staging a good solid rocket booster separation. Guidance now converging. The main engine steering the shuttle on a pinpoint path to its preliminary orbit. 2 minutes, 20 seconds.
And that was the last time we'll ever see solid rocket boosters falling away from the space shuttle heading into orbit.
Of course, there's still a 12-day, possibly 13-day mission ahead, and we'll be keeping tabs on that to see how the astronauts fare and to see how the space shuttle itself performed during liftoff today.
Well, we wish them well. Godspeed to Atlantis, as the folks here at Kennedy Space Center were wishing. And now here is what happens after one of the best attended launches ever. We get to be in gridlock on the way home. This is the beach line over the Banana River, and folks are already heading out, and they are just barely crawling.
Not just the cars, Bob, but look at the boats, too. There are a ton of boats out there.
Going back under the bridge. Oh, my goodness. Well, they had a good show. They had a fantastic show here this morning. Once again, as NASA put it, it was a sentimental journey into history. The Space Shuttle Atlantis on its way to the International Space Station for the last time. It'll be chasing it for a couple of days till it finally catches up. And we were very happy to be able to bring this to you today live from Kennedy Space Center. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned now for Eyewitness News at noon in just a few minutes.
Houston now controlling the flight of the planet. The space shuttle spreads its wings one final time for the start of a sentimental journey into history. 24 seconds into the flight, roll program complete. Atlantis now heads down, wings level on the proper alignment for its 8.5-minute ride to orbit. 4.5 million pounds of hardware and humans taking aim on the International Space Station. 40 seconds into the flight, 3 liquid fuel main engines throttling back to 72% of rated performance in the bucket, reducing stress on the shuttle as it goes transonic for the final time. Engines now revving up, standing by for the throttle up call.